We're in the in-between moment of game 2 and game 3 in the opening round series between the Warriors and the Nuggets. And I've got Brian Witt with me. He's sort of an insider. It's hard to, what would you call yourself, Brian? Like, what's the appropriate title for you nowadays?
These days, it's just stay-at-home dad. My 15-month-old son is keeping me busy these days. Yeah, just taking a break from the sports media life for a bit, but still, in the mix with all the Bay Area sports.
Sounds good. Well, I'd say a stay-at-home dad is the hardest job in the world. So you are a busy man, sir. You are working, but you're behind the Splash Brothers name. You follow this team as well as anyone, and we're going to break down the Golden State Warriors as they prepare for Game 3. This is Locked On Warriors.
Let's do it.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Follow Brian Witt on Twitter at Witness, just with an extra T to represent his name. You came up with the name Splash Brothers. You worked for the Golden State Warriors for a large number of years. You also were a reporter / columnist with NBC Sports Bay Area. I want to ask first things first, man. And you were literally the first person on the planet to basically tell the world that newsflash, Joe Lacob is done spending money for the year. People were clamoring for the mid-level exception. People were hoping for reinforcements with James Wiseman's situation unpredictable, uncertain. And you came out and just said, dude, don't count on anything. This is it. Are your sources that deep? Is that how connected you are with the Warriors? How are you the person to break that news? It was very subtle the way you did it, but you did it. Like, what was the story behind that?
I wouldn't say that, I have super sources or anything like that. I still maintain relationships with some of my former coworkers with the Warriors, and I have friends who are reporters at a higher level around the league, and occasionally I chat with them and get a little scoop here and there. Basically, at that point in time, obviously there was a lot of consternation about how the Warriors were going to fill out sort of the back end of their roster. This was before they had even arrived on Gary Payton as the 15th guy. So the Warriors still had yet to use the mid-level exception, and fans understandably, we're looking around at possible players to fill that spot. And I think really it was just a matter of, at that point in time, the available options weren't going to entice the Warriors enough to convince them to ultimately spend what it would take to bring that person on. And ultimately, it seems like it was the right call. I mean, the production they've gotten out of Payton surely far exceeds anything that they would have gotten from some of the other names that were being thrown out there at the time. So turns out they know what they're doing sometimes.
Oh, most of the time. I mean, look, I would say, in my opinion, this was the first time in this entire run with Myers and Kerr and Power where I was questioning them a little bit. You bring up Gary Payton. There was consternation from my end just because they didn't even offer him a guaranteed contract until January. They first waived him, and he had to clear waivers in order to come back with the team. And when last year he was showing me he should be a permanent member of this rotation. I guess let me ask you this, and this is just, you could just be totally guessing here. Who would have been worthy in the eyes of Lacob, Myers, Kerr, in your opinion, for that mid-level exception? I mean, like, if you're saying that they were willing to spend it if it was on the right player, and I certainly think Damian Lee, Juan Toscano-Anderson, as great of a fit as they've been in terms of morale, chemistry, I think you could have gotten better talent. But are there any names specifically in your eyes that you saw out there that you thought, wow, the team could have added this person and they would have spent the money?
Yeah, I know that they went after Nick Batum, who ultimately ended up signing with the Clippers.
Right.
And Batum's had a good year, and it's easy to see how he would have fit in with the Warriors core and why the Warriors brass would have been interested in bringing in a veteran player like him. But I think that really speaks to the crux of it. There was only a handful of players, and I think, they would have been players like Batum, players that have ample experience, playoff experience, can play multiple positions maybe. And there's just, only a select few of those guys that were available once free agency began. And then they quickly were, taken off the market, and what the Warriors were left with wasn't going to compel them to spend that money.
Did your sources tell you that they offered Batum in the mid-level? Because my understanding was they only offered him the minimum, and that's why he signed back with the Clippers, and that if they'd opened up the wallet a little more, he would have come. I mean, his wife was on social media dropping huge hints he was about to sign with the Warriors. Do you think, or do you know, did they offer Batum in the mid-level? Because you're right, he would have been a tremendous addition to this team.
My understanding is that they offered him the full MLE. And, at the time, he basically took an equivalent offer.
For the equivalent, I thought he took the veteran minimum with the Clippers. He took the mid-level?
He's on the mid-level, I believe. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, whether that was just he was already there and that seemed, he was happy where he was, who knows? But the Warriors definitely made an effort, and I think, like I said, once those first few priorities went off the table, they were happy to just kind of sit back and see how things shook out, and then, as we've said, it ended up shaking out to their benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and look, Otto Porter Jr. is such a similar player to Batum in size and really style. And so it worked out. And look, the Warriors are up 2-0 in this first round. How are you feeling about the Warriors, man? Are you a Bay Area born and raised native? And I'm guessing the Warriors are your team for most of your life. Like me, you've gone through the rough times like we did when we were younger, which makes these moments that much more special, which adds a little extra braggadocio to the commentary that I certainly bring up sometimes, because I remember decades of bad years. How are you feeling about the Warriors this year as someone who is, in addition to being a fan, also means, in my opinion, you're an astute observer. You're watching this team much closer than a lot of casual media professionals out there. How are you feeling about this team, man? Is this a championship team in your eyes? And share your thoughts, please.
I think certainly after the first two games of the first round, if you don't think that they're a championship quality team, then you aren't paying attention. The first two games went far better than I thought they would go for the Warriors. I'm not surprised that they're necessarily up 2-0, but it's the way in which they dominated the middle and second half of both of those games, and really have left little doubt that they are the far superior team in this series. And so it's been an interesting year with all the guys, in and out of the lineup, and not having the big four, big five together until now. And so lots of anticipation and wondering, how's it all going to look? And the early returns they've been amazing. So I think if you're a Warriors fan, you have to be feeling very, very optimistic right now. Forget looking around at the rest of the league. Obviously the other series, almost all the other series thus far have been more competitive. But I think given what the Warriors have shown, they don't really need to focus on anyone but themselves. And if they keep playing the way they are, this playoff run is going to go on for a while.
Brian, you said that perfectly, and I could not agree with you more. If they focus on themselves, that's all that matters. They are that good. It's sad how many people have forgotten the pedigree of this organization and their personnel, given it's only been 2+ years since they've completed that incredible 5 straight years where they had literally, there was the most dominant run in NBA history over a 5-year span, 5 straight trips to the NBA Finals, 3 titles in 5 years, and people are just forgetting that. The recency bias is sad. And for today, I'm going to call out Rob Mahoney, who is the co-host of the Ringer NBA show, who on Bill Simmons' podcast came out and said he still thinks the Suns are the favorite to come out of the West. Shame on you, Rob, given your position of power. And we're going to break this down so much more. First, got to pay some bills, obviously. And Shady Rays, if you need sunglasses, this is the company for you. And I love the fact that it's 420. Happy 420, everyone. You're going to need those shades if you're out there celebrating. And Shady Rays, an independent sunglasses company, is for you. They give you the feature of $200 sunglasses for just a fraction of the price. That means polarized lenses, well-constructed durable frames, and premium high-end finishes. Also, something you're not going to find anywhere else is that Shady Rays has an insane protection program. This summer, if you go to the beach, if you go to a lake, and you drop your sunglasses, poof, they're gone. A lot of people hesitate spending big money on shades for that reason. Well, they have a fantastic protection program that includes lost and broken protection on every pair. They will send you a brand new pair if you lose them, no matter what happens. So give them a try. And if you don't love them, you'll pay nothing. It's as simple as that. Plus 10 meals are donated to fight hunger in America when you shop with Shady Rays. Exclusively for our listeners, head to shadyrays.com and use the promo code Locked On to get 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. That's right. The code is Locked On for their best deal of the season. 50% off 2 or more pairs of Shady Rays sunglasses, backed by over 150,000 verified 5-star reviews.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, nightly recaps of every NBA game with analysis from our local experts. I publish one of these after every game. It's free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Brian Witt on Twitter at Witnessed with an extra T. Tell us, look, there's a funny little debate going on about nicknames right now. I mean, I'm fond of Splash Party personally. I really don't like 3G. I'm hearing people utter that a lot. I've heard Lethal Weapon 3. I forget PTSD. Let's throw that in the garbage. Tell us a story of how you became the founder and the creator of Splash Brothers, and what do you recommend now?
Well, the quick Splash Brothers story is I was working for the Warriors at the time as part of the digital marketing team. And this was back in 2012. It was ultimately turned out to be the first year of the playoff run, the year that they upset the Nuggets in the first round. And so this was around November, December, and my department, one of our priorities was to try to end the Warriors all-star drought. And so try to come up with strategies to get Warriors players all-star votes, because at the time, the most recent Warrior All-Star was Latrell Sprewell in 1997. So it had been quite a while. I
got robbed, by the way. Baron Davis should have been an All-Star. He got robbed. I digress. Proceed. Sorry. There you go. There you go.
I named my dog after Baron Davis. So
wow. I'm a dog person, right, so kudos. Yes.
But basically, I was just kind of trying to come up with ideas, and at the time, Steph and Clay hadn't yet really ascended into the superstars that they are today. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe there's a way that we can market them together. And the obvious connection between the two was their three-point shooting, and how it was obvious early on that they were going to continue to change the game with their three-point shot. And so I was just working. I was covering a game in December. The Warriors were playing the Charlotte Bobcats, so they were still the Bobcats back then.
Right.
And Steph and Clay both, they combined for like 7 3-pointers in the first half, I think. And I was running the team Twitter account at the time, and I tweeted out their halftime stat lines and included the first instance of the Splash Brothers hashtag on that tweet. And it, the splash element, playing off of basketball and making a 3-point shot, but also tying in with the water element of the Bay Area. It was a play off of the Bash Brothers of the Oakland A's, and the Giants, they have the splash hits, and so it worked on several levels, and it was well received. It wasn't anything major right away, but my boss was happy to see where it went, and so we kind of kept rolling it out there, and as voting was continuing, and then from that point on, I think it's really all Steph and Clay that I owe the success to. We did end the All-Star drought that year, but it was David Lee who made it, when really Steph deserved to make it that year, but just the guards were so.
I remember that vividly, man. He got it, but the next year on, he got his recognition.
Yeah, so
keep interrupting, man. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
I don't know, the first, or it was the first couple games out of the All-Star break was Steph's 54-point game in the Garden in New York, and I think a lot of us view that game as sort of the beginning of the Steph the superstar.
Yeah, it was a coming out party for sure. I remember that game vividly. Yeah.
And he went on a tear for the rest of the regular season. Clay too was really coming on, and then they go into the playoffs. They upset the Nuggets in the first round. They give the Spurs all they can handle in the second round. And at that point, it had spread from a small regional nickname to something that was known nationally, and eventually worldwide. And so when I came up with it, I was just having fun on Twitter. I wasn't trying to come up with a nickname that they would become identified by for the rest of time by any means. So it worked out way better than I ever could have possibly imagined. But like I said, I owe all the credit to Steph and Clay. You can come up with any nickname you want, but if the players stink or they don't, live up to the billing, so what? So it was just sort of the perfect confluence of timing and the right players and everything. And so that's the long. Sorry, I said it was going to be short, but trust me, I can do anymore. As for the new death lineup or the new Hamptons 5, or I agree. I've seen a lot of the names that have been thrown out there on Twitter, and I think it's a little early to be coming up with a name that is these guys are going to be known for the rest of time.
Right.
I think if we are comparing them or identifying them as the latest iteration of the death lineup of the Hamptons 5, who are these all-time 5-man lineups who won multiple championships, not just won them, but won them in dominating fashion.
Mm-hmm.
I think this new 5-man lineup probably should, do a little bit more, accomplish a little bit more than 2 5-minute stints. And granted, they were amazing 5-minute stints, but there's still a long way to go before the Warriors get to where they want to be. And it's just, it would be weird if we came up with a name that glorified them and everything, and then they, puttered out next round, right? So
Fair.
not that I expect that to happen or anything, but in my opinion, the best nicknames kind of create themselves, and I think there's no need to rush to come up with one for these guys. If they continue to be as effective as they've been in their first 2 games, we're going to be seeing a lot of them, and I think that will create opportunities for new ideas for nicknames that might be, a better fit.
That's very well put. I, in my opinion, what I'm most comfortable with me is just continuing to call them the Splash Brothers. I mean, there's no number limit on that. Maybe they have a 3rd member now, but you're right. This is all just fun and games. And when we come back from talking about Built Bars, we'll break down the Warriors some more. There's some fascinating stats to discuss, and obviously there's other games going on. I want to talk with you a little bit about the Grizzlies Timberwolves, because that is who the Warriors will face if this continues with the Nuggets, where they finish out the series. But look, Built Bars, you hear me talking about this all the time. These are yummy, incredible protein bars. I just mailed a package to Hall of Famer Rick Barry. I'm excited to get his feedback. Brian, have you ever had a Built Bar?
I can't say I have. But
all right. Well, if we ever meet in person, I'll try to hook you up, because you look like you're healthy. You don't look like anyone who has weight issues or anything like that. And I always tell people, if you want to maintain that health, and if you like keeping the physique, or if you want to gain a solid physique, Built Bar is the way to go, simply because they don't have a lot of sugar in them. Most Built Bars on average have just 130 calories, only 4 grams of sugar, whereas your typical candy bar has 30 grams of sugar. Sugar is toxic, folks. It's horrible for you. It's why Coke and other sodas are the absolute worst thing to put in your body, whereas a Built Bar, you only get 4 grams of sugar. And on top of that, 17 grams of protein. That's why they always make me feel full. After I just eat one of these little protein bars, they do the job, folks. They got incredible flavors. Brian, I'll tell you this. If you, I'll list a few flavors for you. You tell me which one was your favorite. They got mint brownie, coconut almond. They got some marshmallowy flavors. They call those puffs. And then my favorite is cookies and cream. Which one of those would sound good to you?
You had me at brownie.
Oh, bam. There you go.
My guilty pleasure. So
brownies are good. And it's 420, folks. If you got the munchies and you want to do it in a healthy way, all you got to do is go to built.com, use that promo code LOCK15 and get 15% off your order. Use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. You can follow Brian Witt on Twitter at Witness with an extra T in there to reflect his last name. I want to share this graphic real quick because today is not only 420, but we all learned a few weeks back. I was so lucky to, and many thanks to Raymond Ritter, who you worked with for a large number of years. The man is a legend when it comes to PR and to a lesser extent marketing. But today is also Rocco's birthday. Happy 20 and happy birthday, Rocco, the most famous.
Happy birthday.
And okay, so you, I'm guessing, have had the distinct pleasure of meeting Rocco. Is that correct? And how would you describe Rocco in person?
I've run into Rocco a couple times. This was years ago, back when I was still working for the Warriors. I distinctly remember one day I walked into the office kind of through the back door, which is right by the entrance to the players' locker room. And Rocco was just sitting right outside of the locker room by himself. And he kind of turned his head and looked at me as I was walking, like I'm not supposed to be there or something. And so Rocco is very much, he has eyes for Clay and he's no one else. So he just kind of goes wherever Clay goes. So I just kind of walked right by him and he didn't even give me a second look or anything like that. But Rocco is he's a good boy, and
Oh, yes.
happy birthday to him.
Absolutely, man. And tell us about your dog, Baron, right? Is that what his name? You mentioned you named him after Baron Davis. Is Baron his name? And tell us about Baron. What kind of breed and how long have you had him? You're in a relationship.
Yeah, he's Baron's a black lab. He'll turn 5 in about a week, actually, and he's one of the biggest black labs that you'll ever see. He's a monster, but he's my monster, and
Yep.
he's a good boy too, and he keeps me busy along with my 15-month-old human son who
Yes.
keeps me on my toes.
I love that. Happy birthday, Rocco. Again, the whole Clay Rocco dynamic, it gets me in the feels, man. I
Clay's
absolutely
the
love it.
best.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's just, and we're both dog people, so I think it resonates strongly. Changing gears, I didn't realize this until, or I did realize it, but I'd completely forgotten that Stephen Curry coming off the bench. And this is a huge topic of discussion for the Warriors, their starting lineup, because eventually Kerr's going to have to figure out what that is, right? And there's 6, people who seem to fit a starting lineup that's only going to fit 5. But Kerr, actually, this is not the first time Curry has come off the bench. I'd completely forgotten in the 2016 Western Conference semifinals, and kudos to Mark Medina of NBA.com for the great reporting. Stephen Curry had that grade 2 MCL sprain of his right knee, and he missed 15 days. And when he came back in game 4 of the Western Conference semifinals against the Trailblazers, he came off the bench. I think that was only a one game experiment. And then in 2018, in the Western Conference semifinals against the Pelicans, he played as a reserve because he had missed 10 regular season games and 6 playoff games for a similar grade 2 MCL sprain. Only this time it was in his left knee. In case people forgot, Kevin Durant was really carrying, and Clay and Dre were carrying that team in the finishing stretch of the regular season. So Steph is a little accustomed to this. In your opinion, I'm guessing game 3 is going to be when that decision has to be made. I don't think you can keep bringing Curry off the bench. How do you see the rotation kind of planning out here?
Yeah, so I think, Steph's probably going to have the ultimate say on whether he's starting or coming off the bench. I mean, apparently he was the one that said that he wanted to come off the bench in the first 2 games. So if Steph Curry's coming to you and saying, I'm ready to start, then he's in the starting lineup, right? So
there you go. Yep.
I think, obviously it's a tough choice, further complicated by who the opposition is, because
right.
The idea here with bringing Steph back into the starting lineup is about also having Clay and Poole alongside him. And so if you're going with a 3-guard lineup, that inevitably is going to make you susceptible to a bigger team against a bigger team on the glass and such. And the Nuggets happen to have arguably the best big man in the league. And so I understand why people don't want to take Looney out of the starting lineup, or and why people don't want to take Wiggins out of the lineup and Poole out of the lineup and Clay and all of them. Clay is never coming out of the starting lineup. I don't know why people even suggest that. It's absurd.
And I'm guilty. Look, I floated the idea about a month ago because he was struggling, and I thought he could really fit a Manu Ginobili role, given the Warriors are trying to follow the Spurs model of a dynasty. But then it also occurred to me, Steve Kerr played with Michael Jordan, who took a year and a half off. Granted, it wasn't because of injury, and that's a question I want to ask Kerr at some point in terms of what he sees as similarities and differences between the two players, beside the obvious being the injury. And when I thought of that, I realized Kerr's never bringing Clay off the bench. It's just not going to happen. And Clay's starting to play his normal self now. He's looking his normal self. I apologize for interrupting there, but I'm guilty, man. I'll admit when I say dumb things, and that maybe in hindsight was not the smartest thing in the world. You're right. He's not going to come off the bench, nor should he. I mean, continue on, please.
Clay did have to shake off the rust. I mean, he was rusty, but it seems like he's back to normal now. And, I mean, that's a scary, scary thought for whoever the Warriors are facing.
Not for us. Continue on. Sorry.
As
I'm
for,
giddy, man. I'm giddy. What are you? I'm guilty of giddiness.
we have every reason to be. They look sensational so far. So
Yeah.
But as for who I think should be the starting five in Game 3, assuming Steph is back in the starting lineup, I think you put Looney on the bench and go with the 5-man lineup that everyone is so fascinated by and has blown the Nuggets out of the water both times it's played. And there's a couple reasons. I think one, what Wiggins has shown in the first 2 games in terms of his willingness to crash the glass and play with force, I think as long as he continues to do that, they can get away with going small. And combine that with the spectacular defense that Draymond has played against Jokic, which to me, that's the biggest surprise of the whole series. The degree to which Draymond specifically, but the Warriors as a team have limited Jokic. I mean, he's still producing numbers, but they're not in the same way that he was during the regular season by any means.
Not even close, man. Not even. And minus 26 in Game 2. That's absurd. That's crazy.
It's astonishing how well Draymond Green has done defending him. To me, I think Jokic is probably the toughest matchup for Draymond in the entire league. Maybe Karl Anthony Towns is up there too.
That's interesting. I never thought about what Draymond's toughest matchups have ever been. I mean, yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I was thinking back, like in 2015, Zach Randolph was tough. You know, these are
guys who are so big that even Draymond can't necessarily overcome the size advantage.
Right, right. But his center gap is so low, it's almost like an advantage for him. I was seeing a segment, I forgot what it was, where a former player was talking about, and it was a former big, maybe it was Shaq, and they were talking about how when smaller but yet super strong players with those low centers of gravity defended him, it really bothered them because they usually like to lean back to establish positioning in the post, and you can't really lean back because they're lower, right? It's not doing anything to them. And so, you try to back him down, but Draymond's so strong, you can't really back him down that much. It's fascinating, man. It really is how good Draymond is defensively. It's incredible. And your Twitter handle is witnessed with an extra T. I'm so stoked we are witnessing this, man. This is just, if you're a basketball aficionado, this is poetry without words. It's beautiful. I'm with you, man. That's all I was trying to say.
The offense, right, is what gets all the attention, the 3-pointers, and obviously Steph and Clay and Poole, when they're on fire, there's nothing like it. But as I love defense, and I've never had more fun watching defense than Draymond and actually Gary Payton this year. What he does to opposing guards, I've never seen anything like it. And so it's, the Warriors, they don't have a perfect roster by any means. They are certainly susceptible in certain areas, but
it's close.
The uniqueness of several players on their roster allows them to do things, to get away with things that it doesn't seem like they should be able to. And so, just getting back to the lineup, I think if you start the unnamed 5, and
I heard Death Poole, it's like a nickname, which was kind of, I don't mind that one. I forgot who brought that up, but because people call this a death lineup, right? The lineup that will just murder you at the end of games, and adding Poole to it, the Death Poole lineup. I thought that was kind of catchy just because I love the movie, I guess. But yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. Let's leave it unnamed for now. Yeah, let it organically develop.
I think then you have the ability to bring Looney off the bench and match him up against Jokic in the latter half of the first quarter, or potentially if Draymond does get into foul trouble, then you essentially are creating and more fouls or more playing time for your center position. And I don't expect Game 3 to follow the same sort of script that games 1 and 2 did. It's
agreed.
If the Nuggets are going to win, if they're going to win a game, it's going to be Game 3, and the Warriors are definitely going to have their hands full. Sorry, I've got a plane flying over.
I know it's good.
And so I think we have to be prepared for the possibility that Draymond does pick up a couple early fouls, or the Steph or Clay or Poole, maybe one of them, isn't on fire right away. But by adding that third shooter out there, it covers you a little bit from that latter perspective. And also, maybe they blow them out of the water again. Maybe they open up a big lead to start the game, which would be obviously very crucial on the road in what is surely going to be a very tough and raucous environment, and not to mention the altitude that's going to play a factor too. So
absolutely right, man. And you're right. It could go either way. It could be close. It could be another blowout. If I pick this series to go 5, and if the Nuggets are going to win one of these games, it'll be in Denver just because it's a more hostile environment. I want to share a few things to wrap things up. First of all, Gary Payton II, man, I'm 100% with you. I love solid defense. He is just out of this world defensively. I mean the way he pesters Jokic, and he's playing little mind games with Jokic, patting him on the booty, going into a timeout, and that really pissed Jokic off, man. If you get a reaction like that, you're winning the mind game. He's kind of like in the school of Draymond Green in terms of how to get in other people's heads. And for Dub Nation, in case you're curious, hey, what do we have to do to get this guy back beyond this year? Because he's going to be an unrestricted free agent. The Warriors have early bird rights on him. I actually did the research. And so what that means is they can't offer him anything they want. The most money they can offer Gary Payton II next year would be 105% of the league average in terms of salaries, which translates to approximately $9 million a year. And it has to be a deal in the 2 to 4 year range. Otherwise, they cannot exercise early bird rights on him, and they'd have to offer him a 1-year deal for either the mid-level exception or for a min. His dad came out and talked about how he might not come back next year simply because if he gets a $15 million a year offer from someone, the Warriors just cannot match that given how strapped they are with the cap. So let's hope they bring him back. I love Gary Payton II. I want him on this team for the long term. And then Jordan Poole, I want to throw some cool stats out there that folks may or may not be familiar with, yourself included, through the first 2 games. And again, and Brian, if you think of any other player who has experienced a meteoric rise in such a short amount of time like Jordan Poole has, let me know, because that's a question that's stumping everyone I've talked to, in addition to another a stumper, which is how do you stop this new Splash Brothers trio? Good luck with that, right? But I've never seen anyone rise this fast, ever, in the history of the game. And if you think of anyone, let me know. But his 10 3-pointers, that's how many he's made through the first 2 games, are the most ever for any player's first 2 playoff games. That's an incredible stat. He's the only player alongside Wilt Chamberlain to have 25 or more points in each of their first 2 playoff games. And he trails Wilt for the most points ever by a Golden State Warriors player in their first 2 games. Jordan Poole through 2 games is 59. Wilt Chamberlain had 63. He's in some very select company. Any thoughts on the Poole party, man? Like, are you blown away by this? Have you ever seen anything like this?
He's something else, man. It's I did not. I mean, I think I'd speak for almost everyone saying I did not see this coming. He started out the year so well, and as did pretty much everyone on the Warriors, right? And everything was looking so good. And then he dipped a bit. He struggled a little bit in the sort of middle of the season. At which point, I think it was fair to wonder, okay, was that just a mirage? Like what happened there? But clearly it was not a mirage. If anything, he's gotten even better since the beginning of the season. And I mean, it's the confidence that he exudes. It's like he's been doing this for years.
Yeah.
And he expects it. And you just, as you said, it's hard to think of another instance where a player was in the position he was in, which was, a young player running out of opportunities and potentially, not long for the NBA, to now, a huge part of what, as you're showing on the screen, is considered to be the favorite to win the title this year. It's just an amazing story. And I'm sure the Warriors would like to say, they knew that he had this in him, but I wouldn't buy that. I think that even they have to be completely blown away by what he's accomplished this year. And I mean, he's still 22?
Yeah, he'll be 23 in the offseason, I think. Yeah, so he's still 22, correct.
There's every reason to believe that he'll continue to get better and better. He's got the absolute best person to be learning from in Steph. I mean, you watch the way that Poole is playing right now, and it really, it looks, he's playing just like Steph. The way that he's moving around the court, some of the shots that he's taking and making, it's just, it's absurd. So,
it is absurd.
A credit to the Warriors for sticking with him. I think it would have been easy to just kind of say, is this another instance where we didn't hit on our draft pick late in the first round? And, do we need to sort of forego this, forego the building up of the young players on our roster and orient the roster more towards a veteran-laden championship kind of team. Mm-hmm. And obviously the Warriors have kind of tried to split the difference this year. And it's to varying degrees of success. But I think Poole's ascendance this year pretty much marks that entire strategy, that plan, as a success. Because if he doesn't go through the transformation that he has this year, moving forward, the Warriors they're an aging roster, right? And we're wondering how long until this window shuts. But what Poole has done this year is he might have just broken the window. I don't know. If he's shoved it up and blocked it up there, and it's not coming down for a while. And if you throw some of the other promising young guys on the roster, I've been a huge Kuminga fan, even throughout the draft process. Moody, I think is a forgotten guy, but he and also Kuminga both look absolutely spectacular for being 19.
Agreed.
We'll see what happens with Wiseman. That's the big mystery, but you can see the plan coming into view. And
it's crazy. Imagine 5 years from now when Jordan Poole is 27, Kuminga and Moody are 24, and you're right, Wiseman will be 25 or 26 at that point. The potential is just so exciting, man. And the graphic you're referring to for the listeners, courtesy of BetOnline, just 2 days ago, the Warriors were plus 700 as in terms of the odds for them winning the whole thing, the World Championship. 2 days later, they're now the favorites at plus 275. The Suns went from plus 220 to plus 315 and so forth. And in my opinion, rightfully so. They should be the favorites. And one last graphic I want to show, Brian, and thanks you so much for coming on today. We're running really long, but that's for good reason. We're talking about some great things here. Some people wondered, and this is changing the direction just a little bit, how will the league fare with the Lakers and LeBron not in the playoffs this year? Well, here are the numbers, and I'll verbalize it obviously for the listeners today. The NBA delivered last weekend their most viewed opening playoff weekend in over a decade. The Nets Celtics game averaged 6.9 million viewers and peaked at 9.8 million. It was the most viewed first round game since 2016. And the opening weekend of the playoffs, which the Warriors were part of for that Saturday game, across ABC, ESPN, and TNT, averaged 4.05 million viewers, the most viewed opening playoff weekend since 2011. So the league is in good hands. We don't need LeBron, but the Warriors certainly don't hurt things. They're a very popular team, and just their style of ball is just so entertaining. I don't know any other team who is blowing another team out where I can still sit there and watch and be thoroughly entertained, taking away the fandom of it. I mean, I talk to people who care less about how the Warriors do, and they all agree. They're like, yeah, this is just a fun team. They're explosive. They move the ball. They focus on the fundamentals. And Jordan Poole, this is a kudos to the scouting department, kudos to Bob Myers, because when you're having to pick in the late rounds year after year and you're scoring a Kevon Looney, you're scoring a Jordan Poole, I love the recipe they follow, which is that outside of Kuminga and Moody this year, they don't really go for players who are just one and dones, right? They don't go for the super young players. They like to go for players like Stephen Curry was 3 years in college. Same with Clay. Draymond was 4 years. I know a lot of that has to do with Larry Riley, but that's the model for their success. And Jordan Poole, the reason why he fell so low to 28, a huge reason is the fact that many people thought his game was not developed enough yet in Michigan. He came out after his sophomore year when a lot of people thought he should have stayed for one more. But I think the Warriors kind of heard some whispers from the Spurs, who they clearly admire tremendously. I believe the Spurs are interested in Poole, and we're going to probably take him. And so the Warriors swooped in there, and now we have the pool party, folks. And now instead of worrying about the team's future and present, we're worrying about what nickname to call the team, which is utterly incredible. I mean, that is it just blows my mind. And Brian, you are responsible for the nickname that we've been assigning to the Splash Brothers, the duo of Klay Thompson and Stephen Curry. Kudos to you for that. I wish you got checks every time someone said that, but regardless, it is awesome that you get to at least. And anything you'd like to promote or share besides your Twitter account, which again is @Witness. There's just an extra T in there. Anything you want to promote before we call it a day here?
No, I like I said, I'm pretty much just have my hands full these days with my son and my monster of a dog. So not involved in too many things at the moment. But I'm anybody who's active on Twitter during Warriors games surely is aware that I'm very active on Twitter during Warriors games. So you can find me there, and let's enjoy this playoff run together.
Let's do it, man. It's got a long ways to go, but I feel like you and I are both feeling strongly about this. Thank you so much for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Kevin Dana, the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, will join me tomorrow. Now make your second listen Locked On NBA, from the first jump ball of the play-in tournament to the last possession of the finals. Locked On experts take you deep inside the playoffs with insight and analysis affecting all 30 teams. Brian, thank you so much again, man. It was such a pleasure to meet you in person, and let's do this again soon.
Thanks for having me, Cyrus. Oh yeah, absolutely. Let's check back in maybe next round.
Sounds good, brother. All right, man, we'll talk soon. Thank you, everyone. Later.
Thanks, guys.